The date is October 14, 1943, and the morning sky over Schweinfurt, Germany is about to witness a catastrophe of unprecedented scale. As the sun rises, no one can predict that this day will become one of the darkest chapters in the history of the U.S. 8th Air Force. 60 B-17 Flying Fortress bombers plummet from the sky in flames, like toys swept away by some invisible hand. The shrieking of torn metal fuselages mingles with explosions to create a symphony of death. 600 American airmen, sons, brothers, fathers, will never return to embrace their homeland. These losses are not merely catastrophic, they are unsustainable. The 8th Air Force is slowly dying, and the Germans know exactly why they're achieving such overwhelming victory. The story begins in November 1942, when Luftwaffe ace Major Egon Mayer discovers the B-17's fatal Achilles heel through countless engagements. The nose section, this seemingly invincible, flying fortress, has minimal forward defense, protected by only 4 machine guns, leaving the cockpit devastatingly vulnerable to frontal assault. Mayer perfects the head-on attack with surgical precision, closing at combined speeds of 600 miles per hour, guns blazing, pulling away at the last possible second before collision. This maneuver requires nerves of ice and timing measured in fractions of seconds. One miscalculation means mutual destruction in a fireball of twisted metal and burning fuel. But when executed properly, it works with devastating effectiveness. By December 1943, head-on attacks evolve from experimental tactic to official Luftwaffe doctrine. German fighter squadrons perfect the technique through relentless practice and combat experience. They attack in coordinated waves. One element screams toward the bomber formation, unleashes its fury, then breaks away as another immediately rolls in for the next pass. American bomber crews developed their own grim terminology for this experience. Getting the treatment. First, you see them as tiny specks against the infinite blue, far ahead on the horizon. Then they grow with terrifying rapidity. Focke-Wulf 190s and Messerschmitt Bf 109s in tight formation, nose cannons and machine guns already flashing orange fire. The closing rate is so incomprehensibly fast that tracking individual aircraft becomes impossible. They're not coming around you in the traditional fighter sweep. They're coming straight at you, cockpit to cockpit, in a deadly game of aerial chicken. Your forward gunners hammer back desperately, brass casings cascading through the aircraft. But the attacking fighters present impossibly small targets at that closure rate. Tracers streak past in both directions, creating a lethal spider web of fire. Then comes impact. 20mm cannon shells tear through aluminum skin like paper. Windscreens shatter into thousands of crystalline fragments. Pilots slump forward in their seats, their life's blood painting the instrument panels. Engines explode in gouts of flame and black smoke. In mere seconds, a flying fortress transforms from a symbol of American air power into a falling coffin, spinning earthward with its crew trapped inside. John Luckadoo of the legendary 100th Bomb Group, known grimly as the Bloody 100th, watches in horror as a German fighter bores straight into his formation with single-minded determination. They kept coming, he recalls, his voice still carrying the weight of that memory decades later. They may have killed the pilot of the lead ship, or else he was so determined to take down a bomber that he deliberately flew into it, impacting the ship I was flying formation on. When they went down, I had to dump my nose violently to keep from being dragged down with them. The near miss leaves him shaking, adrenaline coursing through his veins, knowing he escaped death by mere feet. The psychological toll on bomber crews becomes as devastating as the physical casualties. Men develop what flight surgeons clinically term flak happy, or flak, Olaf jitters, but these sterile medical terms fail to capture the true horror. Symptoms manifest in myriad ways: chronic insomnia that leaves men hollow-eyed and trembling, sudden explosive rage over trivial matters, complete inability to concentrate on even simple tasks, nightmares so vivid that men wake screaming in their bunks, drenched in cold sweat. Rapid weight loss becomes common as stress destroys appetites. Vision blurs from exhaustion and stress. Some men become catatonic, staring at nothing, unreachable. We began to wonder if they were trying to systematically kill all of us. One survivor recalls years later, his hands still shaking slightly. There were fewer and fewer familiar faces returning every day. You'd go to breakfast and realize half the men you'd eaten with yesterday weren't there anymore. And you knew they never would be again. American fighter pilots feel the crushing weight of failure with every mission. The Republic P-47 Thunderbolt, affectionately nicknamed the Jug for its barrel-like fuselage, is an absolute beast of an aircraft. Powered by a massive 300-horsepower Pratt & Whitney radial engine, armed with 8 .50 caliber machine guns carrying 425 rounds per gun, and built like an armored tank with redundant systems throughout, it can absorb punishment that would destroy lesser fighters. But it has one critical, insurmountable limitation that haunts every pilot range. With standard internal fuel capacity, P-47s can escort bombers only approximately 105 miles into German territory before fuel considerations force them to turn back toward England. Beyond that invisible line in the sky, the bombers are utterly alone, and that's precisely where the slaughter intensifies. Colonel Hubert Hub Zink drills his 56th Fighter Group with relentless intensity, pushing his pilots to their limits and beyond. He develops the innovative Zek fan spread formation that provides maximum tactical flexibility in combat. He preaches aggressive tactics, offensive mindset, and mutual support. His leadership transforms the 56th into one of the most effective fighter groups in the European theater. But even Zemk's tactical genius cannot overcome the fundamental problem. American fighters simply cannot be present at the critical moment when German fighters mass for their devastating frontal attacks on bomber formations deep inside Germany. The experts across the Army Air Forces agree on the grim prognosis. Until long-range escort fighters arrive with sufficient fuel capacity to accompany bombers all the way to their targets and back, losses will remain catastrophic. The mathematics are brutal and undeniable. During the first 90 days of combat operations, bomber groups experience a staggering 400% crew turnover rate. Most bomber crews don't survive their 5th mission. The required 25-mission combat tour becomes a statistical impossibility. A death sentence dressed up as duty. One pilot calculates his odds with cold precision and concludes, flying in the 8th Air Force is like holding a ticket to a funeral, your own. By autumn 1943, the situation reaches a critical breaking point that threatens the entire strategic bombing campaign. The Luftwaffe owns European skies beyond fighter escort range. American fighters lack the fuel capacity to protect bombers during the most dangerous portions of their missions. The enemy exploits this weakness with merciless efficiency. Stuttgart, Schweinfurt, Regensburg, each name becomes synonymous with slaughter, spoken in hushed tones in briefing rooms. Fighter pilots watch helplessly from the edge of their range as bombers burn in the distance. They can only escort so far before fuel gauges force them to turn back, leaving the bombers naked to German attacks for hours. Then, on August 17, 1943, during the bloodbath over Schweinfurt and Regensburg that will be remembered as Black Thursday, one captain in Zenk's 603rd Fighter does something that appears completely insane to everyone watching. He turns directly into an enemy head-on attack, violating every principle of fighter doctrine. What Captain Walker Mahurin doesn't know in that split-second moment of decision is that this seemingly suicidal maneuver will revolutionize American fighter tactics and fundamentally alter the tide of the air war over Europe. To truly understand the crisis facing American airmen, you must first understand the enemy they face. The Luftwaffe pilots attacking American bomber formations in 1943 are not inexperienced rookies learning their trade. They are consummate professionals, the best fighter pilots in the world, forged in the crucible of continuous combat. Many have been flying combat missions since 1936 in the Spanish Civil War, accumulating years of experience before most American pilots even learned to fly. Some have 50 confirmed victories. Others have exceeded 100 kills, numbers that seem impossible to American pilots still learning their craft. These are men who have survived years of aerial combat through skill, aggression, and an intimate understanding of their aircraft's capabilities. John Cummer of the 398th Bomb Group remembers their ferocity with grudging respect. No matter what target they were defending, they came at us balls to the wall. They were brave. I'll give them that. They didn't hesitate, didn't hold back. They pressed their attacks with an intensity that was terrifying to witness. The B-17 Flying Fortress was supposed to be America's answer to this threat. Crewed by 10 men and bristling with 13.50 caliber machine guns positioned to provide overlapping fields of fire, the name itself promised invincibility. American strategic bombing theory, developed over years of peacetime study, held that mass formations of heavily armed bombers could defend themselves without fighter escort through sheer firepower. The combined defensive fire from a tight formation would theoretically swat German fighters from the sky like insects. Then theory met reality over the skies of Germany, and the theory shattered like glass. Egon Mayer's head on tactic ruthlessly exposes the fatal flaw in the Flying Fortress design. The B-17's nose section, where pilots and bombardiers sit surrounded by plexiglass and thin aluminum, has woefully inadequate defensive firepower for frontal attacks. German pilots exploit this weakness with clinical precision born of extensive combat experience. They position themselves far ahead of bomber formations, sometimes 5 or 6 miles distant, then turn and attack straight on in coordinated waves. The closing speed approaches 600 miles per hour. The combined velocity of both aircraft hurtling toward each other. Time available to aim and fire, approximately 3 seconds. Margin for error effectively 0. The attack requires extraordinary skill that only veteran pilots possess. Miss the pull away by half a second and you slam into 4 tons of bomber at combined speeds exceeding 600 miles per hour, creating a fireball visible for miles. But for aces like Mayer and his experienced squadron mates, the risk is worth the reward. By December 1943, head-on attacks become official Luftwaffe doctrine, taught to new pilots and practiced until perfect. German squadrons perfect the technique through constant refinement. They attack in carefully coordinated waves. One element breaks away after their firing pass. Another immediately rolls in for the next attack. Maintaining constant pressure, American bomber crews developed their own terminology for this experience, calling it getting the treatment. First, you see them far ahead, tiny specks against the blue sky that could almost be mistaken for birds. Then they grow with horrifying rapidity. Foch, Wolf 190s and Messerschmitt B109s in tight formation, nose cannons and machine guns already flashing as they open fire at maximum range. The closing rate is so incomprehensibly fast that you cannot track individual aircraft. They blur together into a wall of death approaching at impossible speed. They're coming at you, not around you in the traditional fighter sweep. Your forward guns hammer back desperately, the entire aircraft vibrating from the recoil, but the attacking fighters present impossibly small targets head-on. Tracers streak past in both directions, creating a deadly lattice of fire. Then comes impact, the moment every bomber crewman dreads. 20mm cannon shells tear through aluminum skin as if it were tissue paper. Windscreens explode into thousands of crystalline fragments. Pilots slump forward in their seats, their lives ended in an instant. Engines detonate in gouts of orange flame and oily black smoke. In mere seconds, a flying fortress transforms from a symbol of American industrial might into a falling coffin, spiraling earthward with its crew trapped inside the burning wreckage. The psychological toll crushes even the strongest men. Flight surgeons document cases of what they clinically term flak happy or flak Olaf jitters. But these sterile medical terms utterly fail to capture the true horror of psychological collapse under sustained combat stress. Men develop chronic insomnia that leaves them hollow-eyed zombies. Sudden explosive rage erupts over trivial matters. Complete inability to concentrate makes even simple tasks impossible. Nightmares so vivid that men wake screaming, drenched in sweat, convinced they're still burning alive at 25,000 feet. Rapid weight loss as stress destroys appetite. blurred vision from exhaustion. Some become completely catatonic, staring at nothing, unreachable behind walls of trauma. We began to wonder if they were systematically trying to kill every last one of us. One survivor recalls decades later, his voice still carrying the weight of those memories. There were fewer and fewer guys returning every single day. You'd look around the mess hall and realize half the faces from last week were just, gone. And you knew they were never coming back. American fighter pilots feel the crushing weight of failure with every mission they fly. The Republic P-47 Thunderbolt, affectionately nicknamed the Jug, is an absolute beast of a fighter aircraft. Powered by a massive 300 horsepower Pratt & Whitney R-2800 double Wasp radial engine, armed with 8.50 caliber M2 Browning machine guns, and built like an armored tank with redundant systems throughout, it can absorb battle damage that would destroy any other fighter. But it has one critical, insurmountable limitation: operational range. With standard internal fuel capacity of 305 gallons, P-47s can escort bombers only approximately 175 miles into German territory before fuel considerations force them to turn back toward England. Beyond that invisible line in the sky, the bombers are completely alone and vulnerable, and that's precisely where the slaughter intensifies exponentially. Hub Zank drills his 56th Fighter Group with relentless intensity, pushing his pilots far beyond what they believed were their limits. He develops the innovative Zemkfan spread formation that provides maximum tactical flexibility during combat. He preaches aggressive tactics, offensive mindset, and unwavering mutual support. His leadership transforms the 56th into one of the most feared and effective fighter groups in the entire European theater of operations. But even Zenk's tactical genius and inspirational leadership cannot overcome the fundamental problem. American fighters simply cannot be physically present at the critical moment when German fighters mass for their devastating frontal attacks on bomber formations deep inside German territory. The experts throughout the Army Air Forces headquarters agree unanimously on the grim prognosis until long-range escort fighters arrive with sufficient fuel capacity to accompany bombers throughout their entire mission profile. Losses will remain catastrophic and unsustainable. Then Captain Walker Mahurin discovers something profound that all the experts, with their advanced degrees and years of study, have somehow missed entirely. You don't necessarily need more range if you make every single second of combat count with maximum effectiveness. Walker Melville Mahurin is decidedly not the man anyone expects to change the course of the air war. Born December 5, 1918, in Benton Harbor, Michigan, and raised in Fort Wayne, Indiana, Bud Mahurin is simply an engineering student at Purdue University when war breaks out across Europe. He doesn't graduate, doesn't earn his degree, doesn't complete his studies. No advanced degree, no family military tradition stretching back generations, no influential connections. Just an average Midwestern kid who joins the Army Air Forces as an aviation cadet on September 29, 1941, driven by patriotism and a desire to serve. He graduates from pilot training on April 29, 1942, with adequate marks but nothing spectacular that would mark him as a future ace. When he arrives in England with the 56th Fighter Group in January 1943, assigned to the 63rd Fighter Squadron, he's just another replacement captain among dozens, unremarkable and unnoticed. Hub Zank barely registers his presence among the constant flow of new pilots. The 56th has far bigger concerns occupying their attention, learning to fly and fight in the massive P-47 Thunderbolt under actual combat conditions. Mahurin's first months of combat operations are thoroughly unremarkable by any measure. He flies escort missions according to doctrine. He follows formation discipline precisely. He sticks with his assigned position. He brings his airplane home safely after each mission. He scores exactly 0 aerial victories. Then comes August 12, 1943, the day Mahurin makes a catastrophic rookie mistake that nearly ends his military career and his life. During what should have been a routine escort mission, he inches his P-47 closer and closer to a B-24 Liberator bomber, perhaps showing off or simply curious about the massive 4-engine aircraft. He gets far too close, violating every safety protocol. The bomber's powerful propeller wash, invisible turbulent air churning behind those massive propellers, catches his P-47 like a giant hand, violently sucking him under the bomber's wing. When Mahurin desperately tries to pull away, fighting his controls, one of the B-24's spinning propellers shreds his tail section and aft fuselage like tissue paper, tearing away control surfaces and structural members. He has no choice but to bail out. The crippled B-24, its propeller damaged, has to make an emergency crash landing. Hub Zemk is absolutely furious when he learns what happened. Mahurin is immediately grounded, utterly humiliated before his peers. His squadron mates avoid him in the officers' club and mess hall. He's become that guy, the pilot who almost killed an entire bomber crew through sheer stupidity and poor judgment. But Mahurin uses his grounding time very differently than most washouts who spend their days drinking and feeling sorry for themselves. He studies with obsessive intensity. He watches hours of gun camera footage from returning pilots, analyzing every frame. He studies German attack patterns, looking for weaknesses and opportunities. And gradually, he begins to notice something that nobody else seems to see, hidden in plain sight. When German fighters execute their head-on passes at bomber formations, they're completely committed to their attack run for those critical 3 seconds. From 1,000 yards out until the pull-away point, they're flying straight and level, guns blazing, their entire focus locked on the bomber target ahead. During those 3 seconds, they're vulnerable. If someone had the courage to exploit that vulnerability, every P-47 pilot knows the textbook response to enemy head-on attacks, drilled into them during training: break formation, dive away to gain separation, extend to safety, reset your position. Defensive tactics, survival tactics, living to fight another day. But Mahurin, studying that gun camera footage frame by frame, sees it completely differently. What if you didn't break away defensively? What if instead you turned directly into the attack, meeting aggression with even greater aggression? The geometry is elegantly simple, but absolutely terrifying in its implications. If a German fighter commits to a head-on pass at a bomber formation, and simultaneously an American fighter commits to a head-on pass at that German fighter, both aircraft closing at maximum speed, with combined closure rates exceeding 700 miles per hour, someone will blink first. The question becomes, who has more to lose in this deadly game of aerial chicken? The German pilot is hunting bombers, high-value, slow, moving targets that justify significant risk. But an American fighter turning into him, that's one-on-one, fighter versus fighter, at closing speeds that defy comprehension, with death measured in fractions of seconds. Mahurin does the mathematics carefully. 3 seconds at that closing rate equals perhaps 2,000 yards to aim, fire, and pull away before collision. The first pilot to score killing hits wins and survives. The first pilot to flinch dies in a fireball. Its deflection shooting at speeds and angles no training program ever simulated, never even considered possible. By every measure of conventional wisdom, it should be impossible to execute successfully. On August 17, 1943, over Schweinfurt and Regensburg, Captain Bud Mahurin decides to find out if his theory works in actual combat. Mahurin isn't even flying his own assigned aircraft that fateful day. His regular P-47 is down for maintenance, sitting in a hangar with engine problems. He's been assigned a temporary replacement P-47C2 RE serial number 416259, coded UNV, normally flown by Captain Glenn Schultz. The fighter feels unfamiliar and strange in his hands, the controls responding slightly differently than his own aircraft, but it has 8 50 caliber machine guns with 425 rounds per gun, 400 rounds of devastating firepower. It will have to suffice. The mission objective is clear: escort B-17 flying fortresses, bombing the critical ball-bearing factories at Schweinfurt and Regensburg deep inside Germany. Every available bomber has been committed. 376 flying fortresses, the largest formation yet assembled. It represents the deepest penetration into German territory yet attempted by the 8th Air Force. Intelligence officers predict heavy opposition from Luftwaffe fighters. Intelligence, for once, is absolutely correct. The German fighters hit the massive formation at the Dutch border and don't stop attacking for hours. Wave after wave of Fock, Wolf 190s and Messerschmitt Bf 109s tear into the bombers with savage intensity. Coordinated attacks come from 12 o'clock high. Straight ahead, slightly above, the classic setup for head-on passes. Coming fast, closing at incomprehensible speeds. Mahurin sees them positioning for their attack runs far ahead. Standard Luftwaffe doctrine. Executed with practiced precision, line up 2,000 yards ahead of the bomber formation. Commit to the attack run, guns blazing. Pull away at the last possible second. Every P-47 pilot knows the doctrine. Knows what to do. Maintain escort position, don't break formation. Protect the bombers through your presence. If a German fighter gets through and attacks, chase him down afterward. Mahurin does something radically different. He shoves his throttle forward to the stop, feeling the big Pratt and Whitney engine respond with a surge of power, and turns directly into the attacking fighter, violating every principle he's been taught. His wingman screams over the radio, voice cracking with disbelief. "Bud, what the hell are you doing?" No time to answer, no time to explain. The German Fock, Wolf 190 is already committed to his bomber attack run. He doesn't see Mahurin coming from an unexpected angle until it's far too late to react. The German's nose is precisely lined up on a B-17, his fingers tightening on the trigger, his mind calculating the deflection shot, completely focused on his target. Then 8.50 caliber machine guns open up from his 10 o'clock position, completely unexpected. Mahurin holds the trigger down, feeling the P-47 shudder violently from the recoil of all 8 guns firing simultaneously. Tracers arc across the sky in brilliant streams. The deflection angle is absolutely insane, shooting at a target moving 400 miles per hour while he himself is moving 350 miles per hour in a converging path. Physics and geometry compressed into 2 seconds of controlled violence. Instinct and training merging into action. Hits. Pieces fly off the Fock, Wolf 190's wing, tumbling away in the slipstream. Smoke trails from the damaged fighter. The German pilot breaks off his attack immediately, rolling hard to escape, his bomber attack abandoned. Mahurin doesn't pursue, he's already scanning for the next threat, head swiveling, eyes searching. Another German fighter is lining up on the bombers. Same tactic, same setup. Head-on pass, committed, vulnerable. Mahurin turns into him without hesitation. The P-47 shudders again as all 8 guns hammer out their deadly message. More hits, walking up the German fighter's fuselage. This German pilot isn't as lucky as the first. His fighter explodes in a massive fireball at 25,000 feet, pieces tumbling earthward trailing smoke. First confirmed kill. 2 minutes later, Mahurin intercepts yet another German fighter, a Messerschmitt Bf 109 flown by Major Wilhelm Ferdinand Wutz, Galland, Gruppenkommandeur of 7G26, brother of the famous Luftwaffe General Adolf Galland, and an ace with 55 confirmed kills to his credit. Galland never sees Mahurin coming, never has a chance to react. He's lining up his attack on the bombers, focused entirely on his targets, when 8.50 caliber machine guns tear his fighter apart from an impossible angle. Galland bails out, parachuting down to capture and humiliation on the ground. Second confirmed kill in one mission. When the 56th Fighter Group lands back at their base at Halesworth, England, that evening, Mahurin is immediately swarmed by curious pilots demanding answers. How did you get 2 kills in one mission? What did you do differently? He tries to explain the head-on tactic, the geometry, the timing, the deflection shooting, the psychology of surprise. Most pilots shake their heads in disbelief. That's absolutely insane. One captain says flatly, "You're going to kill yourself if you keep that up." Zink listens quietly from the back of the crowded briefing room. He doesn't say a word during the excited discussion, but his mind is working, analyzing, calculating possibilities. 2 months later, on October 4th, 1943, Mahurin shoots down 3 Messerschmitt Bf 110 twin-engine fighters in a single mission using his revolutionary head-on tactic. He becomes an ace, joining the elite ranks of pilots with 5 or more confirmed victories. By November 26th, he downs 3 more Bf 110s, damages a 4th, and probably destroys another in a single engagement, becoming the first American pilot in the entire European theater to reach 10 confirmed victories. His tactics are working with devastating effectiveness, but not everyone is convinced of their validity. The confrontation happens on November 28, 1943, during a group briefing at Halesworth. Colonel Zenk stands at the front of the room, arms crossed, silently watching his pilots argue with increasing heat. For 20 minutes, they've been debating Mahurin's suicidal tactics, voices rising, tempers flaring. The room is sharply divided between believers and skeptics. It's just luck, Captain Robert Johnson insists forcefully. Johnson is one of the 56th top aces, a survivor of dozens of brutal missions, respected by everyone. Bud's gotten away with it so far, but the mathematics don't lie. You turn into a German fighter at that closing speed. Eventually you're going to collide, or he'll get his shots off first and tear you apart before you can even fire. It's a statistical certainty. Or, Mahurin counters calmly, his voice cutting through the noise. The German blinks first because he's not expecting it. His mind is locked on the bomber. That's his target, his focus. He's committed to that attack run. When I come at him from an angle he's not expecting, from a direction that violates his assumptions, his brain has to reset, has to process this new threat. That split-second hesitation, that moment of confusion, that's when I kill him. You're gambling with physics. Johnson shoots back, his face flushed. Closing speed of 700 miles per hour, you have maybe 2 seconds to aim, fire, and pull away. Miss your pull away by half a second, and you're nothing but a smear across the German's windscreen. It's not tactics. It's Russian roulette. Then don't miss. Mahurin says simply, his calm confidence infuriating to the skeptics. The room erupts into chaos. Pilots shout over each other, some supporting Mahurin's aggressive tactics, others calling him reckless, a cowboy, a danger to the entire group. One captain pounds the table hard enough to make coffee cups jump. That kind of flying is going to get people killed. Not just you but your wingmen, the bombers you're supposed to protect. People are already dying. Mahurin snaps back, his calm finally breaking. 60 bombers lost at Schweinfurt in one day. 300 men gone, just gone. When are we going to stop playing defense and start hunting these bastards like they hunt us? Enough. Hub Zenka's voice cuts through the case like a knife. The room falls instantly silent. Every head turns toward their commander. Zenk steps forward slowly, deliberately. All eyes lock on him. The Wolfpack commander has led his group to over 100 confirmed kills through innovative tactics and aggressive leadership. His tactical innovations. The Zenk fan formation, emphasis on aggressive pursuit, flexible formations adapting to circumstances, have saved countless lives. When Zenk speaks, people listen with absolute attention. Captain Mahurin. Zenk says slowly, measuring each word. Your tactics violate every principle of fighter doctrine we've been taught since flight school. You're supposed to maintain formation integrity, provide defensive escort, engage enemy fighters only when they directly threaten the bombers. That's the doctrine, the textbook, the official policy. Mahurin stands rigidly at attention. Yes, sir. You're doing the exact opposite. Zenk continues. You're breaking formation, engaging offensively, taking insane deflection shots at closing speeds that should be physically impossible to calculate. You're violating every rule in the book. Yes, sir. Mahurin repeats, his voice steady. And you've shot down 10 enemy aircraft in 3 months. Silence. Zenk lets the number hang in the air, lets its significance sink into every pilot's mind. 10 confirmed kills. The 56th Fighter Group's top scorer. All using tactics that the textbook explicitly says shouldn't work, can't work. Sir. Captain Johnson interjects carefully. With all due respect. Just because it's working for Captain Mahurin, doesn't mean it will work for everyone else. He might have exceptional reflexes, exceptional aim, exceptional. Zenk interrupts, his eyes never leaving Mahurin. He's figured out something the rest of us, including me, haven't seen. Something we've been too locked into doctrine to recognize. He turns to face Mahurin directly. Walk me through it. Slow, step by step, start to finish. I want to understand exactly what you're doing and why it works. For the next hour, Mahurin explains in meticulous detail the geometry of deflection, shooting at extreme closing speeds, the psychology of surprising an enemy who expects defensive tactics, the critical importance of timing. Too early, and you miss completely. Too late, and you collide. The role of the P-47's incredibly rugged construction in taking hits, while simultaneously dishing them out. The way German pilots focus on bombers creates a psychological blind spot that can be exploited. Zenk listens intently, asks probing questions, challenges assumptions, plays devil's advocate. Finally, after an hour of intense discussion, he nods slowly. Gentlemen. Zenk addresses the entire room, his decision made, effective immediately. Captain Mahurin will lead a special training program on offensive head on tactics. Participation is strictly voluntary. I'm not ordering anyone to adopt these methods. Those who want to learn, report to Mahurin at 0600 hours tomorrow morning. Those who don't, that's your choice, and there will be no negative consequences. He pauses, then looks directly at Johnson and the other skeptics. But understand this clearly. The Germans have been systematically killing us with head-on attacks for over a year now. Hundreds of bombers lost, thousands of men dead. It's time we return the favor and use their own tactics against them. He looks around the room, making eye contact with each pilot. The German pilots are brave, professional, experienced, some of the best in the world. But they're not gods. They're not invincible. Captain Mahurin has proven they bleed and die just like everyone else. The question each of you must answer is, who among you has the guts to do the same? Training begins at dawn the next morning. Mahurin handpicks 12 pilots willing to learn, men who demonstrate the right combination of skill, aggression, and controlled discipline. They fly Mach head on passes against each other at gradually increasing speeds, building muscle memory and confidence. The margin for error is razor thin, measured in feet and fractions of seconds. 2 pilots nearly collide during the first week, missing each other by less than 20 feet, both shaken by the close call. Hub Zenk personally observes every single training flight, taking detailed notes, refining the doctrine, adding safety protocols. By December 1943, the 56th Fighter Group has produced 7 pilots genuinely proficient in offensive head-on attacks. Mahurin continues leading by example, flying every mission, constantly refining his techniques. The numbers tell an undeniable story of success. Between August 17, 1943 and March 8, 1944, a span of just over 6 months and dozens of brutal missions, Captain Walker Mahurin destroys 1975 enemy aircraft. His specialty, head-on interception of German fighters attacking bomber formations. He damages 4 more, probably destroys 3 others that couldn't be confirmed. But the true measure of success isn't Mahurin's personal score, impressive as it is. It's the fundamental change in combat dynamics across the entire theater. January 11, 1944, mission to Brunswick deep inside Germany. The 56th escorts B-17s through heavily defended airspace. Luftwaffe fighters mass for their standard frontal assault on the bomber formation. Textbook tactics they've used successfully for over a year. But this time, 5 P-47s, led by Mahurin, break formation and turn aggressively into the attack, guns blazing. The German fighters aren't prepared for this response. Their doctrine, their training, their experience all assume American fighters will maintain defensive positions. When Mahurin's element bores straight toward them at full throttle, 850 calibers per aircraft hammering away, the Germans scatter in confusion. 3 Wolf Y-90s go down in flames within 2 minutes. The bomber formation proceeds to target completely unmolested. February 20th, 1944, marks the beginning of Big Week, a coordinated campaign to systematically destroy German aircraft production facilities and break the Luftwaffe's back. The Germans throw everything available at the incoming bomber streams. Over 300 German fighters scramble to intercept, the largest defensive effort yet mounted. Mahurin's tactics have now spread throughout the 56th and beyond. Multiple flights adopt offensive head-on tactics simultaneously. The results are absolutely stunning. In one day of intense combat, the 56th Fighter Group claims 18 enemy fighters destroyed for only 2 P-47s lost. Kill ratio 9:1, unprecedented in the air war. The bomber crews notice immediately and gratefully. One B-17 pilot radios in the clear, protocol forgotten in his excitement. "Thank God for those crazy jug drivers. They just saved our asses." March 8, 1944, becomes Mahurin's finest day, his masterpiece of aerial combat. Escorting bombers all the way to Berlin, the deepest, most dangerous penetration yet, he intercepts a large formation of Foch Wolf 190s positioning for frontal attacks. In the span of just 12 minutes of intense combat, Mahurin destroys 3 enemy fighters using pure head-on interception, textbook execution, his revolutionary tactics. His aircraft takes multiple hits during the engagement. 20mm cannon shells punch clean through both wings. Shrapnel peppers the fuselage, tearing holes in the aluminum skin. But the rugged P-47 keeps flying, keeps fighting, justifying its reputation for incredible toughness. When Mahurin finally lands at Halesworth, ground crews count 27 separate bullet and shell holes in his aircraft, any one of which could have been fatal in a lesser fighter, sir. His crew chief says, shaking his head in amazement and concern, "You can't keep flying like this. One day your luck is going to run out." "The odds will catch up," Mahurin shrugs, already walking toward the debriefing room. "Then I'd better make every mission count while I can." His victory total reaches 19 confirmed kills. But the Germans are learning and adapting. Luftwaffe intelligence analyzes American fighter tactics through interrogation of captured pilots and observation of combat patterns. They issue new guidance to fighter units. American P-47 pilots are now engaging offensively during frontal attacks on bomber formations. German pilots are instructed to expect head-on interception and adjust tactics accordingly. Combat becomes even more violent as both sides adapt. Both German and American pilots, now willing to fly straight toward mutual destruction, betting everything that they'll score killing hits first. The difference: American pilots in P-47 Thunderbolts can absorb significantly more punishment and keep fighting. Flight Lieutenant Joseph Pips Priller, a legendary German ace with over 100 confirmed kills, later recalls the fundamental shift. In late 1943, American fighters changed completely. They stopped running, stopped being defensive. They started hunting us aggressively. The P-47 pilots especially. They would fly through hell itself to get a shot at us. We had to respect that kind of courage and determination. It made our work much more difficult and dangerous. Another German pilot, interviewed after the war, puts it even more bluntly. When the American fighters started attacking us head-on using our own tactics, we knew the tide had turned irreversibly. They were using our own weapons against us, and their aircraft could absorb more battle damage than ours. It became a war of attrition we simply couldn't win. We were being blood white. The statistical data supports these observations conclusively. In August 1943, before Mahurin develops and proves his tactics, the 56th Fighter Group averages 2.1 kills per mission with a kill-to-loss ratio of 3:1, respectable but not decisive. By March 1944, after widespread adoption of offensive head-on tactics throughout the group, those numbers jump dramatically to 4.7 kills per mission with a kill ratio of 7.5:1, absolutely devastating effectiveness. Even more importantly, bomber losses decline dramatically in missions escorted by fighters employing Mahurin's revolutionary tactics. B-17 loss rates drop from 12% to 4%. A reduction of 2/3. Those aren't just statistics. They're real lives saved, real families who get their sons, husbands, and fathers back alive. One bomber pilot, Captain James Howard of the 100th Bomb Group, later writes in his personal diary, "I don't know the name of the P-47 pilot who drove off those Foch Wolf 190s on March 5th, but he saved my entire crew's lives. We were dead men if he hadn't turned into them." The Germans scattered like scared rabbits when they saw him coming straight at them. That crazy bastard flew straight at them like it was a game of chicken, and he knew he'd win. God bless him, whoever he is. But Mahurin's war is about to take an unexpected turn. March 27, 1944, mission to Bordeaux, France. Mahurin intercepts a German Dornier de 217 bomber, attacking a straggling B-17 that has fallen behind the formation. He destroys the German bomber easily, his 21st confirmed kill. But the Dornier's rear gunner, in his final moments, scores hits on Mahurin's P-47. Engine failing, trailing smoke, controls becoming sluggish and unresponsive. Mahurin radios calmly, "I'm hit bad. Engine's gone, going down." He bails out at 8,000 feet over occupied France, enemy territory. The parachute opens below him with a reassuring jerk. On the ground, German soldiers rush toward his projected landing spot, eager to capture an American pilot. Mahurin lands hard in a haystack. Pure luck. German soldiers search within yards of his position, so close he can hear their conversations. For 3 hours he doesn't move a muscle, doesn't breathe deeply, doesn't make a sound. Finally, as darkness falls, the Germans give up the search and leave. Mahurin crawls from the haystack and runs into the night. For 5 weeks, French resistance fighters hide him at tremendous personal risk. They move him from safe house to safe house, always one step ahead of the Gestapo. He witnesses extraordinary courage, ordinary French citizens risking their lives and their families' lives to save an American pilot they've never met. On the night of May 6-7, 1944, a Royal Air Force Westland Lysander, a small, unarmed reconnaissance plane, lands in a moonlit field deep in occupied France. Mahurin sprints across the field as the engine idles. The Lysander takes off under German fire, tracers arsing through the night sky, bullets punching through the fabric-covered fuselage. They make it back to England by the narrowest of margins. When Mahurin lands safely in England, he expects to return immediately to combat operations. Instead, he's permanently grounded from flying over Europe. Intelligence fears that if he's captured again, torture might force him to reveal the French resistance networks that saved his life, compromising dozens of brave people. His war in Europe is over. Walker, Bud. Mahurin finishes World War II with 20.75 confirmed aerial victories in Europe, plus 1 more in the Pacific theater flying P-51 Mustangs. 21 total kills across 2 theaters of war. He's the first American pilot to become a double ace in Europe, the 6th highest scoring P-47 ace of the entire war. But the numbers, impressive as they are, don't tell the full story of his impact. By war's end, offensive head on fighter tactics pioneered by Mahurin becomes standard doctrine throughout the 8th Air Force and beyond. Fighter groups across multiple theaters adopt variations of his techniques. Training programs add offensive head on interception to their curriculum as standard instruction. Gun camera footage of Mahurin's attacks is studied at fighter schools, analyzed frame by frame. The 56th Fighter Group, Zemket's Wolfpack, ends the war with 665.5 confirmed aerial victories, the highest scoring fighter group in the entire 8th Air Force, over 100 kills more than the second-place group. The bomber crews remember, after the war at a veterans reunion in 1947, an elderly B-17 pilot approaches Mahurin, his voice shaking with emotion. "I flew 30 missions over Germany. On my 7th mission, February 20th, 1944, I watched your P-47s turn into the Germans when they were lining up to kill us. You saved my crew that day. Because of you and pilots like you, we came home alive. Because of you, I got to meet my grandson, got to see my daughter get married. Thank you. Thank you for my life." Mahurin doesn't know what to say, never does in these moments. He never thinks of himself as a hero, just a pilot doing his job the best way he knew how. But the Germans remember too. Joseph Pips Priller writes in his post-war memoir, "The American pilot who truly changed the air war was a P-47 driver from the 56th Fighter Group. I never learned his name, but I remember his tactics with crystal clarity. He turned our own weapon against us with devastating effect. The head-on attack, which we had perfected against bombers and used so successfully, became our greatest vulnerability when he used it against our fighters. It was brilliant, suicidal, and devastatingly effective. That pilot changed everything. That pilot was Walker, Mahurin." But his story doesn't end with World War II. Mahurin continues serving his country. He fights again in Korea, shooting down 3.5 MiG-15 jets in the first jet versus jet air war, bringing his career total to 24-5 aerial victories across 2 wars. One of only a handful of American pilots to become an ace in 2 separate wars. He's shot down and captured by North Koreans in May 1952, spending 16 brutal months as a prisoner of war, enduring interrogation, torture, and deprivation. He survives through sheer willpower, returns home, and retires as a full colonel after a distinguished career. The tactics he pioneered remain relevant well into the jet age and beyond. Modern fighter doctrine still teaches offensive BFM, basic fighter maneuvers, based fundamentally on principles Mahurin discovered in 1943. Surprise the enemy by doing what they don't expect, commit fully to the attack, make every shot count. F-15, F-16, F-22, and F-35 pilots study World War II gun camera footage as part of their training. Mahurin's head-on interceptions are still shown at the U.S. Air Force Weapons School at Nellis Air Force Base as examples of aggressive tactics and perfect execution. Walker, Bud. Mahurin dies on May 11, 2010, at age 91 in Newport Beach, California, surrounded by family. He is buried at Arlington National Cemetery with full military honors, his headstone simple and understated. He never sought fame or recognition, never wrote a best-selling memoir, never promoted himself or his accomplishments. When asked about his revolutionary tactics in interviews, he simply said, "Someone had to figure out how to stop them. It happened to be me. I'm glad it worked." But here's the profound lesson that transcends tactics, aircraft, and even war itself. Sometimes the solution to an impossible problem isn't better technology, more resources, or superior numbers. Sometimes it's one person willing to question conventional wisdom, to challenge the experts, to see the same problem everyone else sees, but envision a completely different solution. The Germans pioneered the head-on attack and used it with devastating effectiveness for over a year, killing thousands. It took one American captain, a college dropout with adequate grades and no family military pedigree, to turn that weapon against its creators. Walker, Bud. Mahurin proved that in war, as in life, the greatest victories often come from the most unexpected heroes. The people who refuse to accept that the way things have always been done is the way they must always be done. The people who turn into the attack when everyone else turns away.